everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 4 of the 18-Wheeler Survival documentary. And I'm so happy that you are here watching. This is my mom, Linda. And during episode 4, and maybe a little bit more than episode 4, I am in an induced coma for about 2.5 weeks. So there's so much that happened during that time that I'm not able to go ahead and share because obviously I was sleeping. So this is when my mom comes in to go ahead and share everything she experienced during this time. So, ready?
I'm ready. So, episode 3, the last episode, I talked about when I first found out about the accident, and just that was like such a whirlwind of a morning and day. Just the whole airport experience, and so I'm going to continue from there. And so I remember them pulling up to the front of the hospital, and and they asked me if I was going to be okay, and I said, yeah, I'll be okay, and grabbed my duffel bag, and you know thanked them and headed up towards the hospital. And I tell you what, my heart started racing, and I just started to feel like this. I don't even know. It wasn't like a panic or an anxiety. It was just something that um, you don't normally feel, because you don't normally have to deal with situations like this. And I just remember feeling like, I don't know, it's almost like an out of body experience. But I get into the hospital, and I'm on the phone with the young lady that called me that morning to tell me about Sanaya's accident. And I think I'm gonna. I don't want to call her name. Didn't have permission to do that. So, but I think I'm gonna give her a name. I think I'm gonna call her Janie. So was in contact with Janie, and through the whole time. And she said, she stayed at the hospital because she didn't want Sanaya to be by herself, even though Sanaya was in in surgery for multiple hours and then in recovery for multiple hours. She still stayed at the hospital. She didn't want to leave. So she waited until I got there, and she met me up on the 7th floor of surgical ICU at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And I remember trying to maneuver my way through this huge hospital. And like any huge hospital, it's like, your first day of high school, where you're just lost and you don't know where you're going, and you're looking at signs and trying to find your way. And so I finally found my way up to the 7th floor surgical ICU. And I never met Janie, so I didn't know, who to look for, but she found me. We never met. She found me. So she grabs me, and, she just kind of like took control. And thank God for her. And, she brought me to the table with the red coat ladies, where every day you had to check in and get your little sticker, your visitor sticker. And so we did that, and then going through more doors, and more hallways, and then I'm sorry. And she pushes the button to go into the section where Sanaya was at. And the doors electronically automatically open up, and we start to step in through the doorway. And I look to my right, and it was the second room and I saw her. And I wasn't prepared for that at all. And I just froze. I remember I froze. I felt like my feet were just like glued to the floor and my eyes were glued on her, and I couldn't move. I could not move. I just froze. She has me by my arm and she's pulling on me, and she was like, "Linda, you come on, come on. You have to come on. And you have to go in the room." And I'm like, "No, no, I can't." And I didn't want to go in, cuz all I could see was her just laying there. She was like totally like bruised up, cuts. She had a neck brace on. She had the ventilator. She was on a ventilator, so she had the big tube and several tubes in her mouth, um and she was hooked up to all kinds of equipment and IV drips, and it was just I just was not prepared for it at all. And but Janie kept pulling on me until I finally was like, okay. And I remember walking in the room and just like and just in unbelief of what I was looking at, and seeing my baby like that. I grabbed her hand and I said, "Mommy's here. Mommy's here." Because I know that even if they're in a coma, whether she was in a medically induced coma, and but I know that they can still hear. I know that they can, and so I told her, I was like, "Mommy's here. Mommy's here." And of course, it's like, no response. And so Janie stayed with me. I pulled up that chair and just sat next to Sanaya and just held her hand. And um, thank God that Janie stayed, because she um, kept me talking, she was telling me about all the fun things that they had been doing while Sanaya was there in Atlanta, and how much fun they were having. And then she told me about what happened that night. And then, well, by that time it was the night before, or early morning, and they had decided to go out to a club. And the first thing I asked was, was Sanaya drinking? Was she drunk? And she was like, no, she wasn't drinking. And I mean, she's not really a drinker. So, but I was very grateful that she wasn't drinking. And but she was tired. She was driving and she was tired, and it was, late at night. But Janie told me that um, they were gonna. So she had her brother and um, her friend from Atlanta in the car with her, and they were gonna go to a convenience store around the corner from Janie's house, and then they were gonna, go get some munchies and whatever, and then come back and drop her brother off at the house. So she was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and I guess like at least an hour went by, and she was like, something's not right. They're not answering their phones, and they should have been back long, long, long by now. So she just had this very uneasy feeling, she said. So she got in her car and started driving towards where the convenience store was. And then that's when she saw the flashing lights, emergency vehicles, the ambulances, the EMTs, fire trucks. And then she saw the semi, and then she saw Sanaya's car. And then she was driving the Ford Escape. And she said it looked like an accordion. And at that time, when she pulled up, were just leaving with Sanaya and her brother and Sanaya's other passenger, and taking them to Grady Hospital. So the EMTs gave her all the information where they were going, which hospital and stuff. So then she drove straight to the hospital. Um, they were trying to contact me, but Sanaya's phone broke in the accident. And she said then they had the brilliant idea of taking the SIM card out of Sanaya's iPhone and then putting it in her husband's iPhone. And that's how they were able to call me. And so they didn't know who Sanaya was. The hospital people, they just, apparently they were trying to find some family members before they did the surgery. And so Janie said that she was her cousin and gave them permission to go ahead with whatever they needed to do. Thank God.
And that's crazy for me. When I first found that out, I was like, they didn't automatically just emergency surgery. They waited. And yeah, they waited.
Yeah.
They wanted to go ahead and find family members, like my mom just said. And the crazy part about it is, Janie and I, we look similar.
Yeah.
We have like the same features. She's beautiful. And
yeah, they kind of look like sisters. Yeah,
so for her
definitely.
to say, she was my cousin, completely believable. Yeah. And thank God that she said that, because once she said that, boom, it put me into surgery.
Yeah. So anyway, so Janie stayed with me for several hours. I got to the hospital probably like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then I think Janie stayed until about 9:30, 10, and then she left. And but I remember her first nurse. His name was oh my gosh, Drew. So Drew was her first nurse, and he was like, I mean, he was so cool. First of all, he had a whole arm of, sleeve of tattoos, and he was just on top of everything. So because she had just come in from surgery and recovery and into this room, he was, making sure everything was set up right. So when when it was his time to leave and his shift was over at 7 p.m., he was like, okay, well, I'm done with my shift. And I'm like, what do you mean you're done with your shift? No, I just got here. I begged him, please don't go, because I felt like he was my connection in there. And I knew that Janie was going to be leaving, but he was like, no, the next nurse coming in, they'll be quite, capable of taking care of your daughter and whatever you need. So anyway, and it was, after Janie left, and now I'm in the room by myself, and just staring at Sanaya and just like looking at all of the equipment, and was just the only sound was the beeps, and a lot of beeping going on, and I was just staring at Sanaya, and all of a sudden the Lord says, take a picture of her. And again, how do I know it was the Lord? Because I did not want to take a picture of her. And I actually I argued with God, and I'm like, no, I am not going to take a picture of her. This is not how I want to remember her. And then the Lord said, it's not so that you can remember her like this. It's so that she will know what I've taken her from. And then at that moment, again, confirmation that God was going to heal her and restore her, and that she was going to be okay. It was I had that vision in the airplane, and the Lord showed me that she was going to be okay. But I tell you, when I saw her and the condition that she was in, oh, that just kind of like brought me to a whole different level, and was very hard. And then later on, Dr. Nicholas, so he must have been like on a night shift or something, because he came to her room. He found out that I was there and wanted to speak with me. And um, and it's funny because he asked me to step outside into the hallway. So see, again, I wonder if it's because, even though they're in induced coma, can they still hear what's going on? But he asked me to step outside into the hallway, and he told me, he said, we did everything that we could do for your daughter. And I said, I thanked him. I was like, thank you for doing everything that you could do for her. Now, my God, he's going to take over. And I thanked him. They did a great job. And, but he told me, he was like, the next 24 to 48 hours are very critical. And we're going to keep a very, close eye on her, and her injuries and everything. And then, but he did tell me, he said, um, if your daughter survives, if he said she might be permanently brain damaged, and she might be paralyzed from the neck down, quadriplegic. And you don't want to hear those words. And I was like, I didn't receive them. I did not receive them. I was like, no, she's going to be okay. My God's going to heal her. My God's going to take care of her. And, they were just like, okay. And I'm sure they hear that a lot. Maybe not. I don't know. But I tell you what, I had nothing else to stand on. I could only stand on the word of God, the promises of God. And I had to have my faith planted in him and in him alone. I could not allow any doubt come in. I could not allow any fear come in. I had to stand on the promises of God, and I had to stand on what he already showed me and what he already told me. So that was a very, very difficult first few hours in the hospital. And then I remember when I just sat next to her. I couldn't sleep. I didn't eat. And the next morning, at about 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., 2 hours before shift change, the nurses would have to change her dressing and change her linens and her bedding and her gown. They couldn't even put the gown on her because of everything. They just like draped it over her. And I mean, I didn't see anything underneath. I didn't know that she had a 14-inch open, totally open wound where they stuffed gauze in her open abdomen, and then they would put a piece of gauze over it, tape it up, and the nurse would write the date, the time, and their initials. So they would make sure that her dressing was changed twice a day. And but they would always kick me out of the room. They kicked me out of the room, and they were like, okay, we have to change your dressing and stuff. So, you have to leave and come back in an hour. It'll take us an hour to do this. And I was like, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave her. I mean, I just got there, and so I mean, I'd been there for 12 hours, but still I felt like I just got there. And I didn't want to leave, but they kicked me out anyway. And so I'm like roaming around. I'm roaming around the halls. I found the visitors lounge for that floor, and it was just open for anybody. So I just sat down, and I tried to lay down and said, okay, I have an hour. I can maybe take a nap for an hour. But there were so many people in and out, and I had my bag, my purse and stuff. And I just waited. And then as soon as 6 o'clock hit, I was like racing back to her room, and they were just finishing up, and she was all cleaned up and ready for a new day. And then 7 o'clock, Nurse Drew came back. So happy to see him. And he was just, he had this joy about him that brought joy to the room. I was very thankful for that because the only other sound in the room was just the beeping and the clicking and I did have my phone. I played some worship music real low because I didn't want to disturb anybody else on the floor. But I think that's enough. I want to stop there.
Okay. All right. Well, real quick, what is one piece of advice that you will give, just a short piece of advice that you'll give somebody that's going through one of the toughest moments of their life right now, where they're on the verge of wanting to give up? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, first of all, contact somebody that is strong in the Lord, somebody that you know will pray. Don't just reach out to anybody. You need to have that person or a few people that you can count on that will hold you up in prayer, hold that situation up in prayer. And you yourself, you have to fight against fear. You have to stand in faith. You have to. Because fear will grip you and then cause your mind to go all kinds of directions that that God does not want you to go to. So we stand on the word of God. We stand on the promises of God. Play worship music. I'm telling you, when I tell you that my phone is my lifeline, my phone was my lifeline, not just calling people to pray, but also I had worship music downloaded and I just constantly was worshiping the Lord.
Okay, so next week we will be back with the next episode of the documentary, and I look forward to it. Things are going to start really unfolding. The miracles are going to start unfolding. There is so much to this story. So many people involved. People flew out from the church that we were going to, my family members from California. So please stay tuned and subscribe, follow, and also
Like and share.
Yeah, like and share, but definitely share because maybe somebody needs to go ahead and have some hope. Maybe you know somebody that's on the verge of giving up. So
Yeah.
send this to them. All right. Thank you again, you guys, and have a great day.